America's Atlantic puffins nest on rocky islands a few miles off the coast of Maine, and the story of how they ended up there is far more surprising than you'd expect. Fact number 1. In 1902, there were exactly two puffin pairs left in the entire state of Maine. Just two, and they were of just one species, the Atlantic puffin. People had spent most of the 1800s hunting adult puffins for meat and feathers and raiding their nests for eggs, and by the turn of the century, the bird was basically wiped out here. The only reason those two pairs made it were that they were nesting on Matinicus Rock, an island so remote and exposed that even egg hunters mostly left it alone. Fact number 2. In 1973, a young ornithologist named Steve Kress decided to try something nobody had ever pulled off before. He wanted to move puffin chicks from one island to another and restart an entire colony from scratch. His target was Eastern Egg Rock, a small island in Muscongas Bay where Atlantic puffins used to nest but hadn't for about 100 years. His team brought in puffin chicks from a healthy colony in Newfoundland, hand-raised them in artificial burrows dug into the island, and waited to see if they'd come back as adults. Between 1973 and 1986, they moved nearly 1,000 chicks this way. To convince any survivors to actually settle down and nest, researchers set out wooden puffin decoys on the rocks, since puffins are social birds and want to see other puffins around before they'll commit to a spot. It worked. The first pair nested on Eastern Egg Rock in 1981, and the effort became known as Project Puffin. It's considered the first time in history that anyone successfully restored a seabird to an island where humans had wiped it out. Fact number 3. Today there are 4 islands off the Maine coast with nesting Atlantic puffins: Matinicus Rock, Eastern Egg Rock, Seal Island, and Machias Seal Island. Project Puffin has helped restore more than 1,000 nesting pairs across the first 3 of those, and Machias Seal Island, which was never wiped out to begin with, now holds the single largest puffin colony on the entire Maine coast. Fact number 4. There's a reason every one of these colonies sits on a rock out in the ocean, instead of anywhere on the mainland. Puffins nest in shallow burrows dug into soil and grass, and those burrows only stay safe if nothing can dig them up. On the mainland, predators like foxes, raccoons, and weasels would wipe out a burrow colony fast. Small offshore islands don't have those animals, so a burrow that would be a death trap on the coast is perfectly safe a few miles out to sea. Islands also put puffins close to open water, which matters when you're flying back and forth with a beak full of fish all day. The trade-off is that this same isolation makes puffins vulnerable the moment something new turns up on an island that shouldn't be there. Rats that arrive on a boat, for example, can wipe out decades of nesting in a single season, which is part of why Maine's Puffin Islands are watched so closely today. Fact number 5. The comeback isn't finished business, either. The Gulf of Maine is warming faster than almost any ocean water on the planet, and in years when it warms up too much, the small fish puffins depend on move somewhere else. That leaves puffin parents flying farther and coming back with the wrong-sized fish, which their chicks can't always eat. Some recent summers have brought real breeding failures at the southern colonies, followed by strong rebound years when conditions cooperate. Researchers now treat Maine's puffins as an early warning sign for how the whole Gulf of Maine food web is holding up. Fact number 6. Zoom out from Maine, and the picture gets more serious. Across its whole range in the North Atlantic, the Atlantic puffin is currently classified as vulnerable, largely because of overfishing of the small fish it depends on and warming ocean temperatures shifting where those fish live. Maine's colonies are a small slice of the worldwide population, but the techniques developed here, moving chicks, setting out decoys, and protecting nesting islands from predators, have since been used to help bring back other struggling seabird species around the world. Fact number 7. Here's the part most people don't expect. You can't just walk up to these islands. 3 of the 4 are protected wildlife refuges that don't allow anyone to land ever. Eastern Egg Rock, Seal Island, and Matinicus Rock are boat tour only. You circle the island and watch through binoculars, but you never set foot on the ground. Machias Seal Island is the one exception. A small number of tour operators are allowed to bring visitors ashore when weather permits, though only a small group can land at any one time. Once you're there, you don't wander freely. Guides lead visitors to small wooden shelters called blinds, and you watch the birds through narrow openings so your presence doesn't disturb the colony. This puffin design is available on a mug in the store right now. The link is in the description below. Fact number 8. Macchia Seal Island sits in a stretch of water that both the United States and Canada have claimed since a border dispute left over from the treaty that ended the Revolutionary War in 1783. Canada has kept a staffed lighthouse running on the island since 1832 and still keeps people stationed there today, which is a big part of why its claim has held up over the years. So, the single best place in the country to see a puffin up close sits on a scrap of land that two countries still haven't fully settled the ownership of. Fact number 9. Puffins don't build nests out in the open. They dig burrows or take over old rabbit burrows and lay exactly one egg per year deep underground where predators like gulls can't reach it. Both parents take turns sitting on the egg, which hatches after roughly 6 weeks, and later take turns flying out to sea and back with fish for the chick. That chick has its own name, a puffling. When a puffling is around 6 weeks old, it leaves the burrow alone at night and paddles straight out to open ocean, where it will stay for the next 2 to 3 years before it ever comes back to land. Fact number 10. A puffin's wings are built for swimming, not flying, which makes their flight look almost frantic. They flap up to 400 times a minute and still manage to hit around 55 miles an hour in the air, about the same speed as a car cruising on the highway. Underwater, those same short wings turn into flippers. A puffin can dive up to 200 feet down and stay under for close to a minute while it chases small fish like herring and sand eels, steering with its feet the whole way down. Fact number 11. Spending most of the year floating on open, cold ocean water only works because a puffin's feathers are almost completely waterproof. Near the base of its tail, a puffin has a gland that produces an oily wax, and it spreads that oil over its feathers constantly using its beak, a behavior called preening. The oil keeps water from soaking through to the skin and traps a thin layer of air right against the body, which works a lot like a built-in wetsuit. Without that oil, a puffin would get waterlogged fast and lose the ability to stay warm. It's also why you'll sometimes see a puffin sitting on the water, twisting its head around to rub its beak all over its own back. It looks like fidgeting, but it's basic survival maintenance. Fact number 12. People call the Atlantic puffin the clown of the sea because of that oversized, multicolored bill and its almost comic waddle on land. It's also sometimes called a sea parrot for the same reason. Despite the big personality, it's a small bird. A full-grown puffin weighs somewhere around 12 to 18 ounces, about what a full can of soda weighs, and stands roughly 10 inches tall. Fact number 13. A puffin's beak looks like it was built for exactly one job. Backward-facing spines line the roof of its mouth and the surface of its tongue, letting it hold fish it has already caught while it keeps hunting for more. That's how a puffin manages to fly back to its burrow, carrying 10 to 12 small fish at once, all lined up crosswise in its beak like a tiny fish comb. Fact number 14. That famous orange and yellow beak isn't there year-round. Puffins grow those bright, colorful outer plates specifically for breeding season, and once the season ends, the outer layers flake away, leaving a smaller, duller, grayish beak underneath for the rest of the year. Young puffins don't start with the bright beak at all. Theirs comes in dull and reddish gray, and it doesn't turn that famous orange until they're old enough to breed, which can take anywhere from 3 to 6 years. Fact number 15. Puffins pair up with one mate and stick with that same mate year after year, often returning to the exact same burrow together each breeding season. They also live a lot longer than you'd guess for a bird that size. The oldest banded Atlantic puffin on record lived to 41 years old, and researchers suspect puffins may regularly live even longer than that. Fact number 16. Once breeding season ends in August, puffins leave the islands completely and head out to open ocean, sometimes hundreds of miles offshore, and they stay there through the winter. They don't come back to any island, they don't perch on boats, and they're almost impossible to spot from shore. They float on the surface between dives, sleep on the water, and don't set foot on land again until the following spring when it's time to breed. For a bird that spends a few intense weeks a year as one of the most photographed animals on the Maine coast, it spends the other 9 months as one of the hardest birds in the world to actually find. That's 16 facts about a bird that spends most of its life alone out on the open ocean. For a few weeks a year, it proves it's also one of the strangest, most stubborn little homeowners on the Maine coast. This Atlantic puffin is on a mug in the store today. Check the description for the link.